Welcome back to Love Your Money. I'm your host, Hillary Hendershott. I have with me today the amazing Sheena Yap Chan. She is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, speaker, and podcaster on the topic of leadership and self-confidence. She's the host of the award-winning podcast, The Tao of Self-Confidence, with over 1 million downloads, where she interviews Asian women about their journey to self-confidence. Sheena has been featured on Fox, NBC News, Business Insider, Manila Times, and more. She's also the co-author of 2 international best-selling books. And today we're talking about her debut solo book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, a guide to moving beyond trauma and awakening the leader within. Welcome to the show, Sheena.
Hey Hillary, it's such an honor to be here. It's so great to reconnect with you. I know we've seen each other do stuff on social media and we go way back, so I'm just really honored to be here today.
Oh, it's so cool. It's just so amazing. I mean, I give a lot of lip service to the idea of watching women rise up, being part of the rising tide of all boats, and just watching your success has been so inspiring. So thank you for being here. Let's start with a cultural ignorance question. Tell me, what's the difference between Tao and Dao, and what does that mean?
So I'm probably the wrong person. So back then it was pronounced as Tao, but now it's more accepted to say either or. And when
Okay.
I was searching through my podcasts, I'll share a little background story of when I first started my podcast. So the Tao of Self Confidence wasn't the original title for my podcast. It was, I don't know if you ever saw it in our podcast Paradises group, but I actually had a different title. I was going to call it The Stripper and have a tagline to strip your limiting beliefs away. And so
No, I never saw that.
yeah, so I had a graphic artist literally have a podcast art with a silhouette of a stripper with a whip, and then I shared it there. And of course, everyone was like, I think you're going to give the wrong idea. I don't think you'll have the right audience. And so I had to step back and get clear instead of getting clever. And so I was looking
Yeah.
at iTunes. Back then, Apple Podcast was in iTunes, right? I saw a lot of people saying the art of. And I was like, okay, this is great. But I didn't want to be another person that said the art of. So I wanted
Yeah.
to start looking for different things, and I saw the word Tao and what it meant, and it meant the way, and so it made a lot of sense. And then I had a friend who's a spiritual healer tell me that she helped me get clear, and she's like, "Your podcast title will have a word that starts with a C." And I saw confidence, and then we just came up with the Tao of Self Confidence. Went back and got my graphic designer to redo the art with the new name, and then it's a silhouette. It's an Asian woman, in a professional outfit, but her shadow is a woman with a cape. Um, and
Ah.
that's how I got the name the Tao of Self Confidence. And so the way can be any way because we're all different people. We're going to do things differently. We're going to have different ways to build confidence, different ways to overcome some of the things we go through. And that's why interviewing all these amazing Asian women was so important because culturally we're
Mm.
not told to share what we're feeling, how we're going through. And it's important to be more open, to share that sometimes we struggle, sometimes we have bad days, sometimes we're in a funk. Like I mentioned to you before the call, I was going through
Right.
a funk. And I think we need to share that because in entrepreneurship, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. It's not always about fancy cars and first class seats in business.
No, ma'am, it is not.
Yeah, sometimes it's maybe you have to eat ramen noodles for a month just to get by.
Oh my goodness. Okay, and so this book, I mean, it seems to me like it's the culmination of these 800 interviews that you did with women about their journeys to success and self-confidence and power. Is that how you would say it?
I think for me, it's really about not sharing their stories, but it's more about, some of the commonalities that they went through and kind of put a book through together, right? Like some of the commonalities is like trauma is something that's prevalent in our community, especially recently with what's been going on with the anti-Asian hate. I mean, I just read in the newspaper that 2 elderly Asian people were attacked in San Francisco, just like maybe half an hour ago before we got into this interview.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, and then just the representation of Asian women in leadership alone, we have one of the lowest in the U.S. So part of the reason why I wrote this was because there was a report by Catalyst.org that mentioned that in 2021, Asian women only made up 2.7% in high corporate and leadership roles in America. And then I think there was a report from McKinsey that mentioned it fell down 80%. So we're literally left with nothing. And I was wondering, why do we have one of the lowest leaderships in
Right.
America? Yeah. And so I had to, figure out why, and it was really the catalyst that helped me write this book, really figure out what is it? Because there's a lot of leadership books out there, of course, right?
Right.
But a lot of them are how-to manuals, but if we don't figure out what's holding us back to move forward, we're going to be stuck. And so I literally had to go in, dig deep, talk about the different things we go through, like the model minority myth, the traumas we face, just the things that Asian women face alone, being seen as quiet, submissive, and obedient. People don't realize we're not only carrying the traumas of like our own traumas, we're carrying the traumas of our ancestors, our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and so on. And I feel like in our culture, it's longer because of just the history and the traditions we do that really affect Asian women. Like one of the things that Chinese culture, a sign of beauty back then was having your feet binded. It was considered
Oh,
status. Yeah, it was considered a status
whoa.
symbol. It was considered, I think it was a sign that you were taken or married or something like that. And, earlier this year, I
Right.
found out my great grandmother had her feet binded. And I was
To make
like,
you not be able to walk.
yeah,
Literally,
and
you
like
can't leave.
it's painful, right? Like if you see photos of feet being binded,
Oh, it's torture.
it's torture, yeah. And so, sometimes we don't question the things that we do, right? It's like, well, why did they do that? Was that just like a way to bring them down and give them less power? I don't know, right? These are just guesses. But we have to learn to question these things so we can figure out the root cause and be like, well, should we really follow this or should we let it go? And so I really had to dig deep to talk about these things that we don't normally talk about, the taboos. I mean, mental health is a huge taboo in our community, like any other
Mm.
community, and then finding ways to heal from it. And so that we can go out there and be the best version of ourselves, be the highest version of ourselves, to show up more authentic and realize we all go through something, right? Especially after the pandemic. I feel like the world is in the stage where we're just a hot mess. And I think we just need healing. But healing doesn't mean it's pretty. It could be the ugliest thing in the world, right? You're ugly crying, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling uncomfortable. And I think sometimes we feel like there's always one way of doing things when there's different ways of doing things. So,
Well, and
yeah.
unraveling years and years and years of cultural expectation, cultural habit. I mean, I'm as emancipated and free as I know how to be, but I was still raised Protestant, and there's still some of that in me, right? Some of that be good, be quiet, that kind of stuff. So, and your story really starts with you landing in Toronto as an Asian American woman, and you shared how hard it was for you. You actually said you at times wanted to say change your name to Heather.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw anybody on TV that looked like me. And Toronto is a very multicultural city, right? It's one of the most diverse cities in the world. But, back in the 90s, there was no one on TV or on media that looked like me. So I was always ashamed of being Asian. I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes. I like, denounced being Chinese and Filipino. I was embarrassed to be honest, even going
Hmm.
back home to the Philippines. I would like look down on everybody that wasn't from America
Mm.
or who was just like straight up from the Philippines. And, this was actually just a realization that I had maybe last week. I was like, oh my God, I was terrible. Like, I literally was ashamed of my own culture, not realizing I should be really proud of where I'm from, where I came from, the achievements we had. And so, sometimes when you look back and you do the horrible things you did back then, you're like, what was I thinking, right? Because that was really bad. When I look back and just kind of think about it, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, why was I so embarrassed of being Chinese and Filipino? Why did I not want to be Asian? Why do I want to assimilate to a different culture when, I am more than enough just as myself? And so this is why having representation is so important. We need to show others what's possible. We need to show them, there's Asian women out there who are doing amazing things. Like yesterday, I just found out there's a 75-year-old woman who broke 3 marathon records, I think in Europe.
Are you
Yes.
kidding?
And she's super fit. Like she's my new fitspiration.
Oh, is this the woman you posted this morning?
Yes, yes.
She's 75.
She's
She looks
seven.
like a fitness model.
I know. And then I just found out, like, the women's soccer team in the Philippines competed in the FIFA Women's World Cup for the first time ever and won their first game against New Zealand. I mean, these are the stories we want to hear. These are the stories that we want to share and showcase and say, look, here's our women, here are some amazing women who are, defying the odds, breaking the mold, breaking barriers, breaking glass ceilings, showing the impossible what is possible. And stories like that get me fired up, get me motivated because it's like, especially the 75-year-old marathoner, I'm like, okay, I got to get back into jogging again because, it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how old you are, what situation you're in. Of course, everyone's situation is different. I'm not saying we all have the same situation, but within the capacity that you have, you can find ways to change things, right? You can go out there and start doing little things to yield the big results.
Well, I think it's really insightful and actually brave of you to admit that you had insights last week about looking down on, where you geographically came from or your ethnic culture. And now I notice you're almost always wearing red. Is that about,
Yeah,
is that about what I think it's about?
so for me, red is my confidence color, and I'm a little bit quirky. I try to live as like minimal as possible because that's just
Oh,
me,
yeah?
right? So when it comes to wardrobe, I only actually wear three colors, and people think I'm just the weirdest person in the world, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes as women, we love to buy everything in the same color, right? Especially me.
Yeah.
If there was a dress I like, I would buy it in every other color. And so I have eight of the same dresses in different colors, or three of the same boots in different colors. And so I realized I'm not going to wear all these clothes at all, right? So I had to figure out, okay, I'm going to minimize the number of colors I'm going to wear and then have a color that really stands out. And so red for me symbolizes courage and confidence. And then at the same time, it also represents my culture. In Chinese
Yeah.
culture, red is a lucky color. We celebrate it during birthdays. So if someone's birthday, we wear red as a happy occasion to celebrate. And then Chinese New Year, we get a lucky red envelope with money in it. So it also symbolizes abundance. So you'll
Right.
see me in red 99% of the time. I know.
You're
And
like, I'll take the abundance.
yeah, when people don't see me in the red, they're like shocked. They're like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah."
All your reds and at the dry cleaner.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I thought so. And so, obviously, one of the things the book really tries to do is address head on, which I have not seen before, the stereotypes about Asian women. Of course, I've heard the stereotypes. And so I'm just wondering, did that come from your growing up in Toronto? Did people have those same common stereotypes about you?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was always these commonalities. Especially in the workplace, right? It's like if you speak up, people get shocked. Like, I thought you're just supposed to be quiet. You're not supposed to make any noise, make any trouble. Or it's like you meet someone, you tell them who you are, and they look at you and they're like, well, I've been to China before. And it's like, that's great. I've never been to China in my whole life, right? All of these weird assumptions. It's like, I don't look at you and say I've been to England before because that doesn't make sense, right? But this happens to us all the time. Not that I apologize if that may sounded weird, but
No,
what I
I
mean.
don't know how you knew I was English.
I don't know. I just guess. But it's just like little things like that, and then you know, especially as a woman, it's worse, right? It's like I remember working at my job and I wanted to actually change positions or change into a new job or a different company. And I had an old coworker at the time tell me like, well, why are you going to change your job? You make more than enough as a woman. And back then I actually believed him. And so I stayed at my job for so long because of that. I thought, well, as a woman, I made more than enough. So I guess I don't need to go look for anything
I should
else.
just stay here and wait for my husband.
Yeah, and be miserable, right? So it's insane like what we go through and just the different things, and then also being seen as a sex object, right? I mean, you think, a social media platform like LinkedIn is where people are professional, right? Because it's a professional website, but you'd be
And
surprised some of the people you encounter, like, just like, because I do a lot of outreach, right? And so sometimes, I would reach out to people and be like, hey, I would love for you to support me to buy a copy of the book. And one guy was like, I'll buy a copy if you send me some pretty photos. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, you're really going to say that? And I'm like, where am I? Am I on Facebook or am I on LinkedIn? But it happens, right? Or, you get marriage proposals and you're thinking, this is a professional website, but because, they look at me, I'm Asian, they think I'm probably a mail order bride or something, right? And like
Oh my goodness.
last year, on the day Roe versus Wade was overturned. I mean, I saw a sponsored article. This is a sponsored article, which was a manual on how to land a Asian mail order bride. And so they had like a step by,
No.
yeah, they had a step by step manual of it. They chose the five top countries in Asia to look for an Asian mail order bride, and like what to look for, and the profile of each country. Like they put Vietnam loves male leadership, and just the wording was just disgusting, right? And I called it out, and they took it down, and had like a lame apology, because they were like, oh, we didn't know this was happening, even though they had articles since like September of 2021. But if nobody called it out, everyone thought it would be okay. And you'd be surprised how many people were telling me, but it's a sponsored article. Like, I'm like thinking, what is that supposed to mean? Because someone paid to have it promoted, it should be okay. And, when it comes to journalism, you still have to live by a code of ethics. And, Asian mail order brides, or mail order brides in general, is human trafficking. So you want to support human trafficking because someone paid to promote it? It's
I mean,
so.
I feel like that's a whole podcast in and of itself.
I know.
That whole idea, because those poor women grow up in this environment where they think that's the best they can do is land an American husband.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's not just in America, right? They go to Korea, they go to different countries thinking they have a better life, not realizing they're pimped out, they're trafficked themselves, they get beaten up emotionally and physically. And they don't know the story behind it, right? And so this is why it's so important to call out these things. If not, they think it's okay, and then we get walked all over on. So yeah, it was just crazy to see that. And that was last year. So we
that
still
is
have
wild.
we still have a lot of work to do.
And I had one of those, when a good comic is on stage and they say something and it's really funny and you realize, I didn't realize other people had that experience. And so part of the breath of fresh air that you take is about, oh, that happens to other people too. And, I was reading this section of your book on calling out the stereotypes about Asian women. And I honestly, Sheena, I feel regretful. I feel sad that I'm going to say this, but I didn't realize Asian women were in protest of those stereotypes. I just thought I honestly thought they were interested in perpetrating them, that it worked for them. I mean, I had a breakup 15 years ago, and the man said to me, and I mean, you can tell I'm outspoken. He said, I think in the future I'm going to date Asian women. They don't talk back.
Yep. I mean, we're seen as emotionless or robots, and because of that, we're targets for being Asian mail order brides, being in the sex industry, and also being easy targets for anti-Asian hate. Right? They think if we target them, they're not going to say anything. They're quiet. They're not going to talk back. They think Asian women just love
Where
to
did
serve their
that
men.
quiet stereotype come from?
To be honest, it's probably just since history, right? Like if you look at China, Chinese men were allowed to have multiple wives and concubines, right?
Mm.
But if women did that, they'd have the scarlet letter all over them, right? Because it's like, how dare you? But, that was prevalent also in Korea, right? If you look at India, like child marriages is prevalent. If you're a widow in India, you're considered an outcast to society. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Water, but it's basically a story about
Yes.
that. Yeah. So that was the first time I actually heard about, widows being outcast from India. But there's just so many things that each country in Asia go through, especially when it comes to human trafficking. Like it's prevalent, right? Because
Let alone
it,
putting little baby girls on the river to die.
yeah, I mean, when you look at the cost of living, they don't make as much as like here in North America. So, of course, it's not easier. And then back in the day, if a family had to choose between a son and a daughter to go to school, they would choose the son over the daughter, right? Because
Right.
it's all about the male carrying the family name, the male, being higher than the woman. And so, it's just history, dating back to history where men were preferred over women. And it's like that's the reason why they want multiple wives and concubines. It's just greater chances of a man having a son. That was it, right? There's nothing else to it. I remember my grandma, the highest level of school she was able to go to was grade 6, and then after that she had to leave school to take care of her siblings. And my grandma had 11 siblings, and
Oh
took
my
care.
goodness.
Yeah, we're a big family. If you see like our family Christmas photo, it's like you're trying to search for me. It's like a Where's Waldo moment.
It's like the high school graduating class.
Yeah.
Okay, so here you are, you're Asian woman, raised in the Philippines, growing up in Toronto, subject to and sort of fighting off all these stereotypes. How did, or was there a moment when you decided to take this on, that this was going to be your cause? Did you have kind of a turnaround moment?
I mean, I've always wanted to do something to help women. And then as I
Mm.
kept thinking about it, I really wanted something that helped Asian women because of just my own experiences. I mean, it was one of the reasons why I started my podcast. Back then in 2015, I was looking for resources that really catered to Asian women's confidence because I was dealing with my own. And I couldn't
Mm.
find any. There was nothing out there. And so part of me thought something was wrong with me, or I was, yeah, so I just thought it was crazy. I was the only one dealing with this, not realizing that everyone was dealing with this. It's just nobody ever talked about it. And so, I started the podcast, didn't really know what I was doing. In fact, like I just mentioned, the name of my podcast was wrong to begin with. So I thought I was already a failure from the beginning. Um, and even in the beginning, I just started interviewing every woman, right? Not just Asian women, every woman, because I still wasn't really clear, right? And I think sometimes as women, we think we need to perfect every single thing, not realizing you can always change a course at any given moment, right? So, as I was doing the podcast, and I realized I think I'm ready now to just reach out to Asian women and really create a platform for it. And so I did,
Mhm.
right? And it was okay. Like, nobody's going to notice it. And if they do, who cares? It's not the end of the world. At least you're out there doing something, creating a platform. And as women, we face such a huge confidence gap over men, right?
Right.
If a man and a woman went out to get a promotion, as a woman, we're 110% ready. We know everything and everything from the back of our hand. Yet there's still something that holds us back, which is really how we perceive ourselves. We think we're not good enough. We think there's someone better out there. While a man is probably about 30% ready, and he'll go out there and just do it, regardless if he gets a yes or a no. For him, it's like, I went for it. I know my result. I can move on to the next step. And imagine if women did that, how much like results we could get, right? How much more action we can take,
Oh, I
how
talk
much,
about this all the time, is
yeah,
that women don't get as much, but they also struggle to ask.
yeah. And I always tell people, don't be afraid to ask, right? The worst they could say is no. I mean, I get rejected all the time, like
Oh,
all
sure. If
the
you're
time.
LinkedIn messaging people to ask them to buy a copy of the book, I
Yeah,
imagine you get rejected more than you get accepted,
yeah,
just by the nature of the request. But how cool is it when people do it?
yeah. And you'd be surprised, like, where it could lead to, right? Just being out there, promoting yourself, being your biggest cheerleader. I know as women, we're afraid to promote ourselves out there because of the double standards we go through. But if you have a product and a service that you know is going to change the world, go out there and share it. You'd be surprised how many women constantly ask me, like, how do you know if you're doing too much self promotion? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, are you sick of looking at your face? Because if not, then you're not doing enough. That's how I see it, right? And people don't understand that, back in the day, pre social media, a person needs to see the product at least 7 times before they make a buying decision. Well,
That's
now
right.
with LinkedIn, TikTok, and now even Threads and Twitter, it's going to take at least over 25 or 26 times to before a person makes a buying decision. So, promoting it just once is not going to cut it, right? Like, you have to do things differently. Be okay to promote yourself. Be okay to showcase it out there. Be okay to be on podcasts and on stages and on different forms of media to share your message, your story, your product, your service, because it's
Yeah.
going to help somebody out there. Guys don't care. They'll be in your face, right? They'll be in your face telling you, "Hey, buy my stuff. Hey, buy my stuff. Hey, I can help you." And as women, if we did that, guess who shames us the most? Women, right?
Correct.
Unfortunately. And this is probably a topic that's never talked about, but I know that part of the reason why we don't advance as fast is because as women we can be catty. And I dealt with it in the office, I've dealt with it even in this journey, right? And realizing, we just need to find ways to get out of that and learn to collaborate, because it's through collaboration where we can create actual change and not trying to be the superwoman and shaming other people, that we're not taking care of our kids or we're going out to work. Everyone's in their own
I feel like that
stage.
catty energy is just sort of misogyny and patriarchy that we're perpetrating on each other.
Yeah.
It's so heinous. And so you're now one of the only resources for Asian women's confidence. So what's been the reaction from the community of Asian women?
I mean, it's not just Asian women. Actually, I've gotten a lot of great feedback from, every person, regardless if they're Asian or not, how they love the book, how it could relate to them. And I was really grateful for that, because for the longest time, I would always get questioned like, do you think this can relate to people who aren't Asian? And, at first I was like, yeah, I mean, everyone goes through trauma, everyone goes through confidence issues, but I kept getting it
Right.
a lot. And I was like, am I like stupid? I don't know how to relate to other people. I don't know, right? But you would never ask like Jack Canfield or Tony Robbins the same question, So, why am I getting constantly asked about this? And it's insane. It's crazy that this still happens. And, but it's been a really great journey just to see the people, readers telling me that they're having the hard conversations with their kids, because having those hard conversations isn't easy, right? If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, being able to walk through their own traumas, right? And of course, I'm not a licensed mental health therapist, so of course, this book is based on my observations, research, my own experiences. I mean, I tell people, if you need a mental health therapist, go out there and search for one, right? Because I'm not it. I'm not the licensed mental health therapist, but I've been through enough to understand like these are some of the commonalities. These are things we go through. Here's some of the research that's backed by it, and it's all packaged into this book. So yeah, I've just been grateful for the whole experience, and I just love when people take selfies with the book, or share out, they have the book in their
Hint, hint.
hands. Yeah, like
Yeah.
like this.
I love the shameless, not self-promotion. I love it. I love it. I feel like you embody so much of what I talk about, which is like no one's going to advocate for you except you,
Yeah.
right? Sit back, like the community is going to isolate you as their hero and then exalt you up on a pedestal. No, that's not how it goes. And so you have to really be willing to step out and promote for yourself. And so thank you for doing that. One of the things you say in the book that I thought was very interesting is about doing away with the word minority.
Yeah.
Uh, Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, we've been seen as a minority, any person of color, right? And I was like, why are we called that? Like, I don't understand. Like, when you think about it, there's nothing minor
Right,
about us, right? And so
right.
why do we keep using this word? Like, can't we just use another word like, underrepresented, or just who, like, we're all people in the
How about
end.
just Asian?
Yeah, or just,
Or
we're all humans, right? I mean,
right.
we need to get away from language that really just bring people down to another
Separates.
level. Yeah. And it's, like language like this that really hurts us, right? And so for me, I don't like that word at all. I don't like being called that. I would never call other people that. And so I just replace it with underrepresented. That's it. Because like sometimes you just sit back and you like wonder like why do we use this, like what's the
Right,
meaning behind it, and then when you think, do I really want to be called that? No, not really. Right?
right.
So we need to stop using this word. So that's just me. I mean, everyone's different, of course, but like when you like sometimes sit down and just dig deep, you're like thinking, why, right? And then you get curious, and and then you start like just thinking to yourself and thinking like we could do something better. So yeah.
As a white woman in Silicon Valley, I often wonder what side of that line I'm supposed to straddle, because
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be humble because of my privilege. But also, when I look around me, I'm actually the ethnic minority. There are more Asian and Indian people here than white people, honestly, because Silicon Valley engineers. And so I never know how to grapple with that term. It's like,
Yeah.
Maybe not here. So thank you for calling that out. And so I will just use the term underrepresented. Uh, so what do you think, as you interviewed people, and clearly your book really attempts to synthesize the core of what it takes to be and build confidence. How would you? I know it's a super big question if you want to take it apart in sections, but clearly that's what the book is about. And so, what's your core message to women? What action steps would you recommend?
I think for women especially, the biggest thing is being okay to ask for help, right? We're always seen as the superwoman who does it all, but that doesn't help us. I mean, it's exhausting trying to do everything yourself, right? I mean, if especially if you're a mother, like you're doing like 10 jobs plus your business or your like work, and then taking care of your other family members. So we have to learn to seek help from one another. And in fact, seeking help was the biggest boost of confidence for me because I realized I didn't have to do everything myself. I realized there's other people who are better at what they do than I would, and so I would just do that, right? Having
Yeah.
support is so important. As women, we want that support, but we're so afraid to ask for that support. So, be okay to join a women's group, hire a coach, hire a mental health therapist. Like, you don't have to do everything alone. Even reading a book or listening to a podcast, right? Start small. You don't have to make big leaps to create the big results. I say it's always the small, actionable daily steps is what yield the big results. So, because for me, doing the big, like trying to make the leap, actually brought my confidence down because I didn't wasn't able to hit that goal, and so I felt bad, and I thought, oh man, I'm the biggest loser. I need to like not do this. So taking small steps is really important. So
Biggest
like
loser.
yeah. So, like, a lot of people want to write a book, right? They want to write a book. They think it's the most daunting thing in the world. I mean, if you broke it up in sections, it's not that bad. Like, say you wanted to write a page a day, and you did that for 100 days straight. You just wrote a book. Yeah.
And then all you have to do is sell it.
Yeah, put it together or hire someone to put it together, hire a copy editor or a proofreader, and then you're done, right? I know it's easier said than done, but I mean, think about it. 1 page a day for 100 days straight. You got a full book right there. Or let's say you need to write 50,000 words, divided by 100. That's like what, 500 words a day? If you wrote 500 words a day, you got a 50,000 word book. You got you got a book.
So the easiest way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. That old
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. Rome wasn't built in a day. Everything starts with your first step, right? So just take it one step at a time, and you'd be surprised how much you can accomplish.
Amazing. Well, Sheena, I don't know if you know the power of your voice, but you're such a powerhouse too. I mean, I don't know if people reflect that to you often enough. You have such clarity and such great thinking. I mean, just so many ideas in this interview. You basically covered most of the questions I wanted to ask you in the first 6 minutes, so then I had to go back and pull it apart. But I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed the book, and just want to thank you for being here. We will make copies of this book available to folks who are listening. For those of you who are listening, we'll put a link underneath the show. Go buy the book today. Buy it for your female friends. Buy it for your Asian female friends. And let's make sure that Sheena's work gets spread around the community. Sheena, anything you want to say before we close up today?
I just want to say thank you again for having me. It was such a fun conversation. Appreciate your support. It just means a lot. And I know for everyone out there who's been supporting me along the way, I just want to say thank you because without you, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much.